Would you tell me tell us what you told me on the phone yesterday?
Okay. Yeah. Our grandson's 11 years old, plays soccer, and there's a teammate on his team that single parent mother, divorce and all that stuff anyway. She's struggling to raise 3 kids, and our grandson had a chance to interact with him over a weekend out of town. Yeah, that's kind of the backstory. And a few weeks ago, he found a toy that he wanted, and so he asked his mother, our daughter, to buy him one. She's for the price that he said. She said, "I saw it on the internet for $3 or $2, I think it was." Anyway, he said, "Well, buy me several of them." So he bought them and he started selling them. He said, "I can sell them for $5. Okay, I make me a little bit of money. So as he started selling them, then he thought about this family, and he said, "I'm going to raise $100 to give to this family." And we heard about it, and so we told him, said, "If you sell $100, we'll match the $100. It gives you $200. So that excited him, and he sold his $100 plus some, and he said, "I'm going to go to $300. So he raised $200 plus ours is $300. And a week ago, this past Friday evening, they took it to the family, and he took some of the toys over there with him. And he was supposed to be here and show you the toy, but anyway, he's got more important things to do, save lives. But anyway, he gave one to each of their 3 children, and she said, and he told her that he was selling them $5. And she said, "Well, I've got $15, I'll pay you." He said, "No, ma'am. I sold these and I raised $300 to give to you and your family." She started crying. And she said, "Last night I was laying right here on this couch. I said, God, you know that you're the man of my house. You know everything about my house, my family, and you know I've got a bill coming due." By the way, she's injured her foot. She cannot work. She's been off of work for several weeks, and she had reconstructive knee surgery, so she's going to be off a while longer. So there's a crisis there. She said, "You know, I've got a bill coming due next week, $300. And God used an 11-year-old boy to meet that need. And on the way home, he asked his mom, he said, "Mom, I started to raise $100. Papa and Mama gave me $100, that's $200. Why did I go to $300? She had the opportunity to tell him God knew there was a need to meet exactly. And so he used him to use that.
Amen. So, thank you, Don. You did that briefly. Good job. Good job. Our scripture today, Matthew chapter 25, verses 14. "For it'll be like a man going on a journey who called his servants," he's talking about the kingdom of God, "and trusted them with his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, each according to his ability. Then he went away. Then he who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them and made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. He who received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward and said, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered me 5 talents. Here, I've made 5 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a little, and I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also had 2 talents, came forward saying, Master, you delivered me 2 talents. Here, I've made 2 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a little. I'll set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. He who also received the 1 talent came forward and said, Master, I knew you were a hard man, reaping where you didn't sow and gathering where you didn't scatter any seed, so I was afraid. And I went and hid your talent in the ground, but here you've got what is yours. But his master answered him and said, You wicked and slothful servant, you knew that I reap where I haven't sown and gather where I haven't had no seed? Well, then you ought to have at least invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one who has the 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more will be given to everyone, and he will have an abundance. And from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. I tell that story, Don, when I heard Don relate that story the other day of what was going on with his grandson, I thought of this. You know, in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 18, it says, You shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the power to get wealth, that he may confirm his covenant that he swore to your fathers as it is this day. We see right here that God, in this parable that Jesus is saying, that God gives some more than others. I mean, we all know you don't want me to play basketball. You don't want me running a marathon. I've got other skills. And there's people, I've got a girl working for me right now that can draw anything. That's a gift. It's a blessing. God equips people with different things. So we're not all equal in that sense. We just bring different things to the table. Regardless of what he has given us, God respects a return on what he has given us. So to the 5, the guy who gave 5 talents, you got 5 talents more. He doubled his money. The guy who gave 2, doubled his money. The guy, and number 1, the 1 talent, that's a fascinating study because I think a lot of us are in that category. We're fearful and we don't take risks and we end up just getting by. So that's a whole different story. So what we want to get to, though, and Don's story, Don's grandson's story, reminded me of this parable because here's somebody who sees a need, and as far as we know, he hasn't made a profession of faith yet, right? Okay, so a grandson who has compassion that God built in him. He's made in the image of God. He's got compassion that hasn't been squelched yet, but he knows how to make a deal, okay? Folks, that's a skill. That's a skill. My son's that way. He's a crane operator, but he'll sit on, between picks, he'll sit on his phone and find something. Daddy, go buy me this. He'll find it cheap. Then I'll go pick it up, and then he'll end up selling it later on down the road. And if you talk to Terry Brimhall, he said, well, I just buy stuff and sell stuff. That's just, some people have that gift where you're able to spot a bargain, you pick it up, and you use it for good. So God gives some more than others. He expects a return, and he's going to take the fearful and the unproductive in place with the productive. Okay. Sometimes we see a system that's faltering and say, well, there's an injustice here. Well, maybe they were just less than exemplary in their stewardship of what they had, and so it ends up being in the hands of the others. So the purpose of all of our doings here is we want to give a man a fish and feed him for a day. That's what's called relief. A lot of what the charities that we do around town, whether you see soup kitchens, clothes closets, and I'm speaking as someone who has done this. We did it for 6 years downtown. Passed out food faithfully, passed out clothes faithfully, and what really finally gave me the freedom to stop doing it and change the focus of the ministry was lack of long-standing results. Had a bunch of great-hearted people doing a lot of good, hard work, but not seeing any life change in the people. So I've got a little video clip I want you to see. This is going to build on this. But everybody has something to bring to the table. Everybody's got some skills, and that's what this video is about right here.
One of the things that we have to come to believe is that everyone has something to contribute in the life of the community. That no one is so poor that they have nothing to bring to the exchange. We've been created in the image of God. We've been created with potential, with capacities, with talents, and a design to maximize those, to use every bit of our God-given ability to accomplish useful and productive things in this world. Whatever erodes that, whatever diminishes that, whatever takes away from that sense of dignity and purpose is against the will of God.
Innovation is not the problem. People assuming that they're innovators is the problem. It's our attitude, it's our approach, it's our mindset. Rather than coming in and trying to establish ourselves as innovators in a situation, we go in and we seek, who are the innovators in this situation? Asking people to be the solution to their own problem, allowing them to innovate, that's what empowerment really is. That's real change. So that when we leave, we drive out of the dangerous neighborhood, we go to our homes elsewhere. Guess who stays? Guess who becomes a part of their own solution?
There was real truth in the fact that God has given everybody inherent dignity and worth and value. And when you set up a situation where you forget that, where you feel like you're just a little bit better than them, or you're more knowledgeable than them, or because you're more educated than them, you have more answers than they have, then you are set up to failure. You get the nice, polite nods, but you don't get transformation.
You've heard people come back from trips and say, oh, those people, they have nothing. It's this assumption there's just a deficit of human resources, economic resources, knowledge resources in a person's life, in a family's life, in a community's life. And when you have that perspective, of a needs-based perspective, what tends to happen is you quickly assume, oh, the solutions are going to have to come from the outside. The knowledge has got to come from the outside. The economic resources need to come from the outside. All solutions are not based in the community, but from outside the community, and in you come. And that approach is going to intensify people's poverty of being and poverty of purpose, even as you're trying to overcome their poverty of condition, their physical realities.
Needs-based development focuses on the deficits and shortcomings in the life of a person or a community. Folks, let's remember what's going on here. We've got folks who are struggling with a sense of superiority and God complexes. That's us in the room today. And we're trying to engage with materially poor people who typically are suffering from a marred self-image. Does it seem to you like a good starting point in that dynamic that we're trying to overcome, a good starting point to walk up to a materially poor person and say, what's wrong with you? How can I fix you? How are you broken? What do you need from me? Guys, it's not a good starting point to overcoming this dynamic. It starts off at exactly the foot that we want to avoid. What needs-based development does is it assumes that solutions and resources will come from outside of the individual or community. It says, you're poor, you can't do it. The solution is going to come from outside of you. And it sets them up for expecting something to be brought in to save them, which is exactly what we want to get away from. What needs-based development fails to do is to identify and to mobilize the assets of a person or a community. What's the goal? The goal is restoration. The goal is for people to have a sense that they're made in the image of God. He has blessed them with gifts, all kinds of gifts. Physical resources, social resources, spiritual resources, and to get them to start to steward those resources and develop those resources more effectively. That's the goal. So by starting off by saying, I don't know what you got, but I know what I've got over here that I can use to fix you. What do you need? Doesn't start off with where you want to go. It starts off on the wrong foot. And so in needs-based development, we're ignoring the assets that are already there. Asset-based development starts off with what's right. It focuses on the capabilities, skills, and resources of the individual or community. Oh, I think it was about 12 years ago, I was in a Sunday school class at my church, and it was a Sunday school class on working with the poor in our community and how to do it. And I was told to go out and engage in an activity called asset mapping. It's a fancy word for basically asking people to list their gifts and abilities. And I thought it was the stupidest thing I ever heard of. And I was supposed to go door to door in a ghetto in the city in which I live. In the city in which I live, there are significant racial tensions. I was supposed to go into a ghetto full of African-American households. I was supposed to go in as a 6'10" white guy on a Sunday morning, knock on doors, and say, hello, I'm from this church called New City Fellowship. I'm from New City Fellowship, and I'm here today to love my community. What gifts and resources and abilities do you have? Now, it turns out this isn't the best way to do this, but off we went. I pretty much wanted to die. There was a class down the hall on the fine points of theology, and I'm thinking to myself, why didn't I go to that class? So off we go, 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning. Now, anybody who answers the door is not in church, so it's kind of a selected sample. So, knock on the door. A lady comes to the door. She's about 5 foot tall. An African-American lady at my navel. And I'm looking down at her as non-paternalistically as I possibly can. And she's looking up at me. Now, the scene itself was just bizarre. So, African-American lady at my navel looking up at me. I'm this giant, I'm going, oh, dear Jesus, just beam me up right now. I said, ma'am, I'm from New City Fellowship. I'm here today to love my community. What gifts and abilities has God given you? And she looks up at me and she goes, what? I said, what gifts and abilities has God given you? And she said, what? And then from behind her, in her apartment, in a housing project in a ghetto, from behind her comes a voice. She can cook chitlins like there's no tomorrow. I looked at the lady and I said, ma'am, is that true? And she's kind of got a little smile on her face. And she said, I'm a pretty good cook. She said, why don't you come on inside? I want to talk to you some more. Right. So we went inside. She called all the people in the house together. We were all sitting around on couches. I didn't know what to do next. So I just reverted to my script. I'm here from New City Fellowship today. I'm here to love my community. What gifts and abilities has God given all of you? I wasn't sure what's going to happen next. One guy says, well, that guy over there, his name is Jake. He can fix bikes like nothing you've ever seen before. I've never seen anybody like this guy. He can fix bikes. And Jake goes, I am pretty good at bikes, but Hal over there, he's an auto mechanic. If your car is ever having trouble, Hal's your guy. He can fix your car. They spent 20 minutes bragging about each other. And I started to notice something. They started to sit a little straighter in their seats. They started to kind of have a little sense of that they were somebody. I looked back at the first lady. I said to her, I said, ma'am, what are your dreams? What are your gifts? I've asked her. Now I'm asking her, what are your dreams? She said, dreams? I said, yeah. And she said, well, I've never really told anybody this before. I said, okay, but we're connecting. She said, my dream has always been to have my own cooking business, my own catering business. I said, what prevents you from achieving those dreams? She said, I don't really know. She said, I guess what it comes down to, she said, I know how to cook, but there's kind of the business part of it I don't know how to do. She said, I think they call it a business plan. She said, I don't know how to write a business plan. I think I need somebody to help me write a business plan. I said, what if I had some folks from my church come who know business and kind of help you develop your business ideas so you can use your gifts to fulfill your dreams? She goes, I love that. Asking the question, is poverty alleviation. Now, folks, I'm not saying this is the end of the story. I'm not saying you never bring in outside resources. I'm simply saying the starting point is to focus on gifts and abilities that they already have.
Okay, so we're going to pick up where we left off last time. Got a few different odds and ends of things to do. Okay, this is what section are we in now? The role of participation in community development, right? It's the process you want to focus on, not the product. Now, we might create what's successful from our perspective and send to our donors, but way more important is for the community members or the households involved, if they can say, yes, this worked for us. This savings group thing we did, it was worth it. That was a good thing for us. Or they come back and say that savings group was okay, but, and you've got to listen to that but. So they've got to be part of the funding success, and then you have to be able to respond to that. Does it make sense? So it's a step further where they're really at the table all the way through. And at the end of the day, they're speaking into, was this successful or not?
Oh, yeah. He's been in it 8 years already. But his dad's an electrician, too. Come here. My dad. Is that okay?
If you're working in a community where there's poverty, then you need to be looking at who else is addressing this in our community. What are those different groups and peoples, and how can we work with them in what they're already trying to do, and what might we add to the mix? And if you're outside that community, even more so, you need to ask who's working there, who's doing good work, and what does it mean to come alongside them to help them succeed. It's not about us running in and doing something new necessarily. It's saying what's already there, what's God's already doing, and how do we kind of jump on board and saying, I'm going to be faithful to stand with you as you do God's work in that community.
An asset-based approach is one where you really approach a community or approach your target group with the sense that they have things to offer, they have inherent dignity and worth that God has given them, they have experiences that you don't have, and so while you may be bringing some new technical knowledge to them, you are going to sit in the space with them and be a learner alongside of them.
When you come with relief in a place where people's lives are static and stable, with just limited issues, then oftentimes you're actually creating harm. You're harming the development process, or you're harming the people within there. Oftentimes that outside resource never help people to see their own assets. It blinds them to see the assets that they have, so that they can be able to use those assets to emerge. And remember that the use of local resources is what brings in sustainability. Let outside resource, outside ideas, outside help only come to supplement what already exists, but not to replace it.
Peoples who are poor themselves as households and communities, their voice and their involvement is the essence of what development is. So participation is core. It's often been said it's the engine of development. It's what creates ownership of what's being done, and out of that ownership that creates enthusiasm. Let's get this done because it's ours, it's our idea.
If you want to make sure that the well is used, if you want to make sure the tractor is used, if you want to make sure the malaria nets are used, you have to use a participatory approach. You've got to get people to engage in the process, because if people own the thing, it'll work better. And that is true. But our message to you today is that participation isn't just a means to getting the tractor used. Participation isn't just a means to making sure the well is taken care of, but rather that having people participate in stewarding their gifts and resources, having people participate in the planning of how to use those resources, having people execute is a valid end in its own right. And so participation is not just a means to an end, but a valid end in its own right.
You can go online to When Helping Hurts. There's 6 sections, and you can watch all of them. They're about 15 minutes long, and you can watch them for yourself. And There's a When Helping book hurts small group experience, or this is the main book right here. Let's just really open your eyes to what we're talking about right here. So what we're seeing right here is everybody has something to offer. We've heard from an 11-year-old kid who has the gift of wheeling and dealing. Mom had some capital, but he saw the opportunity and took it and made some money. We see where going into a neighborhood, and I learned that downtown when working with folks downtown, guys could fix stuff. Guys, Marvin, I tried to work him here. I had a guy downtown who was a great leader. He could lead men. He could motivate men. He could lead volunteers that would come in from the suburbs. He could lead me, but he couldn't kick the crack. So he had some other issues that need to be worked with. But there's going to be assets in whatever neighborhood that you're working in, whatever people that you're working with. So this church is a gospel teaching, gospel preaching church, and a lot of times our perspective is, well, folks, if they just got Jesus, everything would be all right, and that's true. But a lot of us don't have home training. You know, there's a lot of deficits in just life skills that Jesus is not going to fix, but the body of Christ can fix if the discipleship process is there, if people come alongside other people and understand it's a relationship, not just, hey, I'm here to fix you, okay? It's that God complex that we all struggle with. Those of us who have figured it out, if we're not careful, we're going to talk down to people that haven't got it figured out and end up running them off. So, charity, and guys, we're surrounded with it. We have been told now since 1963, since prayer has been kicked out of the schools. It used to be red, yellow, black, and white. We came to school, we had a prayer. Yes, the country was imperfect. We saluted the flag. There was an ideal that was pointed to. Okay, and now we come some 50 years later into this experiment where there is no common standard. And so we have a secular worldview out there in the world and a lot of secular thinking in the church. And so when you have a charity from a secular perspective, those of us who have are supposed to give to those who don't. Marxists think the same way. Take from those who have and give to those who don't. We all know that a lot of times we've had experiences. You give people a sum of money and the money's gone. One of these video clips, and this book right here talks of a whole village that was built. Schools, houses, village, doctor's office, and a year later it's abandoned, and the people that it was built for were back to recycling metal on the streets. They hadn't been brought along. So if your concept of poverty is, oh, I've got a Pathfinder and you don't, there's equality, well, that's a secular way of thinking. That's a borderline Marxist way of thinking. Because our poverty, the ultimate poverty that we have, is that we don't know Jesus. That's the biggest poverty. We have a broken relationship with God, which affects relationships with others and everybody else. So when you have a secular perspective, you have a lack of resources, we have unequal possessions. Education. It'll fix everything, right? We all know people that are educated beyond their intelligence, okay? Our colleges are filled with them. Our judges' benches are filled with them. They've got the white lab coats. They've got black robes, yet they lack wisdom. Okay, so education is not necessarily the answer. Another is a lack of power. You know, power to the people. There's injustice. We must right the wrongs. If that's your view of charity, that is a secular view. Charity from God's perspective, then, is extended on the basis of need. Remember how God set up a commandment of just, look, all you guys that are plotting fields. Remember now, Boaz, his mama was a whore, okay? Rahab the harlot. So first generation, Boaz is renting a field or he's done bought a field. He's working it in such a way that he's hired people and he's obeying God where he leaves the corners unharvested to where the widow, the orphan, and the foreigner can come in and obey. So it's based on need. Jesus says the poor you will have with you always. So if the poor is going to be with us always, then we need to develop a system in our life. God, what portion of my day, week, or resources am I allotting to take care of the poor? Okay? And if I'm going to do that, I want to use methodologies that work, that get results. Okay? I don't want to do methodologies that look good. Okay? We're getting ready to go into service week here with our student ministry, and we're going to do some of the things that I've come to bristle at a little bit. You'll make up sandwiches and you'll run downtown and just pass them out. And then you look and, man, there's trash laying all over the place, and somebody's going. Then you send another group of volunteers to clean up the trash. All right? We did that with an apartment complex for 15 years at Faith, and we finally had to tear down the apartment complex because the conditions never improved. But there was a steady stream of white church vans coming in and giving away stuff. What did it tell the people that live there? You can't take care of this yourself. That's the message we're delivering. We'll do it for you. That's paternalism, folks. That's, you all right. That's paternalism. Everybody has something to bring to the table. Everybody's got something to bring to the table. So God's perspective on charity is extended on the basis of need, extended without partiality, okay? We don't get too much in your business, okay? It's extended to those who don't deserve it, okay? It's extended to those who cannot repay it. And it's extended for the benefit of the recipient exclusively. Now, I say that because I think a lot of times our work with the poor is to make us feel better. Boy, that felt good. And it does feel good. Okay? To help somebody. I ask people, would you rather be, Jesus says it's better to give than to receive. Which one would you rather be doing? I would rather be the one giving. Okay? It's humbling to be on the receiving end of that. But guys, if we're going after that good feeling, and some people get high on that good feeling, and they do it over and over again, and they end up creating dependency. So, it happens in homes, it happens in churches, it happens in schools, it happens in governments. Parity, then, is what we're looking for. Okay? And life situations can change. I grew up in rural Mississippi, and I don't have time to tell you all my story, but, laundromats, bologna, red beans and rice, drying clothes in front of the heater. We were pretty poor. And so God has blessed within one generation a lot from where I grew up. But parity, we never were told, my parents never told us we were poor. We weren't told to be envious of other folks. We were told to read and read and read, and we had no television. And I give a lot of credit to Daddy, and that changed a generation. It changed our family tree. There was no television in our home. But parity, then, is the quality or the state of being equal or equivalent. When one helping sees themselves as being equal to the one being helped and communicates that effectively. And that's where I struggle. Because I struggle with that even amongst sane people, even folks that are normal, if you will. And my guys that work with me know I expect them to read my mind. Okay? Read my mind. I want you to look at a situation and figure it out, and don't bother me. If I have to tell you every little single thing to do, then I need to hire somebody else. What's the point of hiring you? Okay? Rightly or wrongly, I'm working on that. I'm working on getting better at effect. And this younger generation that's coming on, you got to do it even more. Okay? You've got to really spell it out. You have to have them repeat it back to you. Okay? It's tough. Okay? This is the first generation that's been raised with these things. We're coming to deal with it now. Sam?
Saying about when you in Mississippi, man, again, you were poor. What I've come to find out is, like, with the black family versus the poor white family, the poor black family. The poor white family, like you said, you didn't think you was less than anybody else or whatever. you was poor, didn't have anything, but we're happy, and we're going to work hard and get what we need to get. But it just seemed like and then one time I think the black family was like that too. But what I found out with the blacks, that, you know, it's like I expect somebody to help me. I expect somebody to, you know, to do something for me, and I want people to see that I'm poor. I want, you know, you can go to heaven and be poor, and you can go to heaven and you go to hell and be poor, or you can go to hell and be rich. It doesn't matter, you know what I'm saying? So I guess what I'm trying to say, so the guy confused what I was trying to say, but what I'm saying is that I've seen so many poor people, poor black families that they expect to be helped, and it's like, I want you to see that I'm poor. And I think it was a time back in the days when black people depended on the Lord. They depended on God, and God was prompting the black family. But somewhere along the way, something happened where they stopped depending on the Lord and started depending on the government. And then, but in the next other neighborhood, you know, and like I said, I live up in Millington, and there's a lot of still poor white people in Millington. Everybody think, you know, just black people is poor, but there's a lot of poor white people, but they don't look at themselves as poor. They look at themselves as, hey, you know, we just gonna keep working hard and doing what we're doing. And, you know, one day we may catch our break, and one day we may. But I got my wife and my kids, and I'm happy. I got a job, I can work every day. And so that's sort of the way. I don't know why I felt like that way. You know, I grew up in Fayette County. Man, we same way you was. I mean, man, we didn't have an inside toilet. You know, all this kind of stuff like that. And so, but I never considered myself as being poor. You know, my grandfather, he was a painter. He worked hard. We had hogs and cows and stuff like that. We worked hard, and you know, and God gave us what we, you know, got, man, because we worked hard, and we didn't look at ourselves as being poor, and you know, the white man got more than we got, and all. We didn't look at ourselves like that. So, man, I don't know really what I was saying, but
We know what you're saying.
It's just, you know, I mean, it's just crazy how you see it, you know, because since we're in Millington now, man, it's just amazing. You see people, it's like everybody the same. I mean, you got white people that look like they don't have nothing. But you follow them home, they got a big pretty house. It's just a good place to live in, man, you know, because people don't think they're above each other.
No. Thomas Sowell wrote a book called The Vision of the Anointed. He's one of my favorite authors. He's in his 80s now. But Thomas Sowell, Walter Williams, it gets back to paternalism, where a group of people thinks they know better for another group of people what's good for them, and that you can't make it unless we step in and help. And that's crippled our cities. It's crippled the Indian reservations. It's crippled rural Appalachia. It's crippled It's crippled Haiti, to where you just have huge amounts of money and resources come in, but you haven't involved the people there and said, hey, what did you already have? You came in with the attitude, we're going to fix you. Well, it ain't fixed, folks. It's not fixed.
It's crippled single moms right here.
Yeah. Single moms, another thing, where you say to the man, you're not necessary. And there's no fault divorce. It's a lot of things to attack the family and break up and bust up the family, which is just a whole other topic, but it works together.
The government doesn't make a good daddy.
No.
And when Judy Hogan speaks, pardon me, Warren, but when Judy speaks, you guys may or may not know this, but she says that what is being done presently is crippling single moms in this community. She works in a single mom ministry every week. She sees it firsthand. Carol Gordon, I know you've done the same thing too, and others have. So they're not speaking from a position of unawareness. They're involved and engaged in the trenches every week, every day, and they see the result of coming in with a preconceived notion and idea about this is what you need to fix you, rather than taking a asset-based approach. And so I'm just wanting y'all to know her frame of reference.